My name is Sophia, and I am a 32-year-old lawyer. My husband is Ethan, 35 years old. He works passionately as a freelance graphic designer, but his income has always been unstable. Because of that, the financial foundation of our family was mainly supported by my income. Ethan has a younger sister named Madison. She is a 25-year-old intelligent woman attending law school. I had been looking forward to the day when we could work together as colleagues in the same field. Until that Halloween weekend came, I never imagined that our relationship would reach its worst possible end in such a way. The incident happened the day after the Halloween party. Madison came to our house carrying a large plastic bag. Without any sign of guilt, she laughed happily as she pulled out a crumpled white bundle of fabric from inside the bag. "Sophia, I'm sorry. This got soaked in paint, and it's a little torn." It took me a few seconds to understand her words. What she held out to me with a smile was my one-of-a-kind wedding dress, custom made for $15,000. The specially ordered lace was smeared with red and green paint, and the hem had been brutally torn apart. It was nothing more than the remains of a dress, an unspeakably tragic sight. As I stood there speechless and trembling with anger, something unbelievable happened before my eyes. Ethan, standing beside me, looked at the devastation and burst out laughing. "Ha! Madison, you really went all out. But hey, it's fine, right? It's just a dress. Just a dress." That single remark froze my heart cold. My precious memories and the very symbol of our marriage. All of it meant nothing more than just a dress to my husband. Instead of understanding my sorrow or anger, he mocked my pain and treated his sister's foolish actions as an amusing mishap. In that moment, something inside me shattered completely. I glared at Ethan with eyes burning with fury. "Just a dress? Do you even realize what you're saying?" That was a one-of-a-kind wedding dress I had custom made for $15,000. But my anger failed to reach him. Ethan shrugged in disbelief and said, "What are you talking about? Madison didn't do it on purpose. She didn't mean any harm. She's family, so just forgive her. This isn't about intent, Ethan. You're missing the point." I responded as calmly as I could, yet my words were sharp as a blade. "Do you remember where that dress was kept?" It was stored in a specialized bridal preservation service, where the temperature and humidity were perfectly controlled, and it had undergone special cleaning, all so that we could one day pass it down to our future daughter. It had pieces of my grandmother's and my mother's dresses sewn into it, carrying the memories and love of 3 generations. That dress was, quite literally, my treasure. At my words, Ethan's face stiffened for a moment. "Can you explain how Madison managed to take the dress from there?" I pressed on. "She used the contract information I had given her just in case and lied to the service, claiming she was acting as my representative. That's how she tricked them into handing over my wedding dress. This isn't a matter of borrowing it for a while. This is fraud. This is theft. She abused her knowledge of the law, the very thing she's supposed to uphold, to commit an outright crime." At my perfectly logical words, Ethan's face twisted in frustration. Even then, he still refused to stop defending his sister. "Crime? Don't exaggerate. She needed a special outfit so she could show off to her friends at Halloween. She figured you'd refuse if she asked, so she just acted on her own. The dress got ruined by accident in the end. You don't have to blame her that much." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was justifying Madison's calculated actions, blaming me for not lending the dress, and trying to dismiss everything with the word accident. The fact that her motive was pure vanity, to flaunt herself in front of her friends, didn't seem to bother him at all. "So your sense of justice doesn't seem to function when it comes to your sister." That's not what I'm saying. You're being too cold. Just because you're a lawyer doesn't mean you have to reduce everything to laws and rules. We're family. Don't you have any compassion, forgiveness, or mercy?" His words snapped the last thread holding my patience together. "Compassion? Forgiveness? Why should I show mercy to someone who deliberately deceived me, stole a treasure carrying the memories of 3 generations, destroyed it, and then shamelessly admitted she did it just to show off? Beside us, Madison sat there under her brother's protection, showing no sign of remorse, staring down at the floor. And when she finally opened her mouth, the only thing she said wasn't a heartfelt apology, but a small, sulky murmur, as if she were the victim. I said I'm sorry, didn't I? At that moment, I understood. These people have no gratitude, no respect, and no sincerity. All the goodwill I had given them was nothing more than an entitlement in their eyes. They depended on my financial stability while trampling on my heart. Is there any betrayal more selfish and cruel than this? I felt tears threatening to spill from my eyes. However, before those tears could reach my cheeks, they instantly evaporated, consumed by the raging flames of anger deep within my heart. And at the very moment when my grief and fury reached their peak, I felt my mind becoming strangely calm. The emotional wife, Sophia, no longer existed. Standing before me were nothing more than a perpetrator who had committed a wrongful act without any sign of remorse, and an accomplice who condoned that act and mocked the victim. Nothing more, nothing less. Emotional appeals would never work on them. If so, I would confront them in the only language they could possibly understand: responsibility. I drew in a quiet breath and spoke to the two of them in a voice as cold as ice. Enough. I now understand perfectly well that any further discussion with you is meaningless. I have no intention of playing at being a family any longer. Madison, if you are someone studying law, you are about to learn firsthand what the consequences of your actions truly mean. And Ethan, you as well. The one I truly misjudged was you. In that moment, I made an unshakable decision, both as a lawyer and as a human being, to bring down the hammer of the law upon them. What surged through my chest as I walked away from the living room was not simple anger. It was a deep, profound despair, the despair of having my very goodwill rejected and trampled upon. I had once looked forward to Madison becoming a proud colleague, standing beside me in the legal profession someday. The reason I had placed such high hopes on her future was not without significance. I came from a family that was far from wealthy, and during my years in law school, I spent every day buried under student loans and part-time jobs. I would study case law in the library until it closed, then head straight to my late-night shift. While fighting off sleep, part of my mind was always worrying about next month's rent. Back then, I remember how dazzling my classmates looked, able to focus solely on their studies without any financial burdens. That was why I didn't want Madison, so full of talent, to follow the same painful path I had walked. I wanted her to face the law without worrying about money, to devote herself entirely to her studies, and to maximize her potential. I wanted to provide the best possible environment for a junior aspiring to walk the same path as I did. With that single-minded resolve, I decided to invest in her future. Specifically, I covered the entire rent for the apartment she rented near her graduate school campus. This wasn't mere financial assistance. To me, it was an advance investment in a future colleague who would one day share the weight of the legal world with me. Because Ethan's income was unstable, he couldn't do anything to support his sister and simply accepted my help in silence. I always reassured him that he shouldn't feel guilty about it, telling him that this was a gift from both of us to her. And yet, they trampled on that goodwill with muddy boots and mocked it. If that's the case, there's no room left for mercy. What I was about to do was not some sentimental act of revenge. It was nothing more than the rightful execution of my legal claims against a broken contract. The next day, I sat alone in my office, calmly sorting through my thoughts. Away from the suffocating atmosphere of that house, I could finally focus only on the facts and the law as a lawyer. Analyzing Madison's actions from a legal standpoint was effortless for me. Removing someone else's property without permission constituted theft. Destroying it through gross negligence amounted to property damage. A criminal complaint was more than possible. At the same time, I could file a civil lawsuit demanding $15,000 in compensation for the destroyed dress. All the cards were in my hands. Once my resolve was set, I acted swiftly. There was no time to drown myself in sentiment. As a lawyer, I would simply proceed with the necessary steps based on facts and law. First, I contacted the management company of the luxury apartment where Madison lived. The message was concise. This is to notify you that I am immediately terminating the automatic payment of rent under my name, effective today. This was the first sanction I imposed. A few hours later, my phone rang loudly. Of course, it was Madison. On the other end of the line, she was in a complete panic. Sophia, what's going on? The management company just called and said that if next month's rent isn't paid, I'll have to vacate the apartment. What is happening? I responded in the same calm, businesslike tone I used in court. The reason should be clear from your own actions. You removed someone else's property without permission and caused significant damage. This is simply about taking responsibility for that. Responsibility? You just want me to pay for the damages, right? But cutting off my rent payments without warning is cruel. What am I supposed to do? Listening to her frantic voice, I spoke evenly, each word deliberate and unambiguous. Madison, as someone studying law, you need to understand your situation precisely. Your actions expose you not only to civil liability for damages, but also to potential criminal charges for theft and property damage. In other words, I have the legal right to file a criminal complaint against you. I could hear her sharp intake of breath through the phone. Of course, suddenly becoming a convicted criminal would hardly be wise for your future. That's why I'm giving you a choice. I delivered the words I had prepared in advance like a blade to her chest. There are two options. 1. Face criminal prosecution and answer for your crimes in court. Naturally, I'll also be filing a separate civil lawsuit. Or 2. Repay the full $15,000 in cash to compensate for my wedding dress. If you do that, I'll settle this matter as a civil dispute and resolve it quietly. $15,000? There's no way I can afford that kind of money. Then I'll give you a grace period of exactly 1 week. In that week, you'd better figure out how to secure the funds and discuss it thoroughly with your brother, Ethan. If even a single dollar is missing, or if the deadline passes by even 1 second, I won't hesitate to file a police report. That was my final ultimatum. I gave her no chance to argue and ended the call unilaterally. This was not a threat. As a lawyer, I had simply informed the perpetrator of the legal facts and my rights. There was no more leniency, no more mercy. From here on, this would be a quiet battle fought for the law and for my dignity. How much my ultimatum had shaken the siblings became clear that night, the moment Ethan returned home. As soon as he stepped into the living room, he slammed his fist against the table and exploded at me. Sophia, are you out of your mind? What the hell did you say to Madison? You gave her a choice between a criminal complaint or paying $15,000? Are you trying to legally blackmail my sister? Still seated on the sofa, I didn't even lift my eyes from the book I was reading. It's not blackmail, Ethan. It's a formal notification of facts. And she is not just your sister, she is the perpetrator who damaged my property. I am simply asserting my lawful rights as the victim. Your rights? Don't be ridiculous. She's just a 25-year-old student. How can you not help her when she's family? Aren't you ashamed to ruin the future of someone younger than you aiming for the same legal profession, all because of this? His words no longer reached me. I quietly closed my book, looked straight into his eyes, and spoke clearly. The one who should be ashamed here is Madison, who committed a criminal act and is now clinging to her brother to escape responsibility. And you, blindly defending her and blaming me, the victim, are just as guilty. As a freelancer, you don't have the financial means to help her. In the end, all you can do is shout at me like this. My words left Ethan speechless. I had struck a nerve. From that day on, our home turned into a cold battlefield. Ethan ignored me completely, while my phone was bombarded daily with messages from Madison, as if cursed. They were far from sincere apologies, just endless strings of manipulative words filled with self-preservation and shifting blame. Sophia, please, I'm begging you to reconsider. If this continues, I'll be kicked out of my apartment. Ethan's really worried too. I don't want our family to fall apart because of this. Another time, she wrote, I'm truly sorry about the dress, I am. But I didn't mean any harm, right? Is it really fair to destroy my entire life over a single mistake? That's just cruel. But no matter how many words she wrote, nowhere, not once, did she mention any concrete plan to take responsibility or repay what she owed. Somewhere deep down, they must have assumed I wasn't serious. Perhaps they believed that appealing to family ties would eventually make me give in. To be honest, even as I prepared for litigation, I can't deny there was a sliver of hesitation within me. Despite my logical lawyer's mind, as a human being, I couldn't stop myself at night from recalling the days when Ethan and I laughed together, or when Madison once looked up to me, saying, I want to be like you, Sophia, her eyes shining with admiration. Was it really right? To drag people I once called family into a courtroom and place them on the defendant's bench? That question weighed on my heart like a heavy chain. But it was Madison herself who severed the last fragile thread of my compassion. The day before the fateful deadline, I received a message from an old college friend. Sophia, are you okay? You might want to check Madison's social media. A sense of dread gripped my chest as I opened the app. And when I saw the post, I felt my entire body surge with boiling blood. There, alongside a photo of my ruined wedding dress, deliberately edited to only show certain parts, was a caption that made my vision blur with rage. Trying to ruin someone's future over just a single dress. Unbelievable. Does being a lawyer give you the right to abuse your power like this? I'm at my breaking point. Hashtag toxic sister-in-law, psychopath, I am the victim. Under that post, a flood of sympathetic comments from her clueless friends poured in. That's terrible. Madison did nothing wrong. Someone like that isn't family. And Madison replied to each of them as if she were some tragic heroine. Thank you. Your words are the only thing keeping me going. I just have to endure this for now. There wasn't a trace of gratitude toward me. There wasn't a shred of remorse for what she had done. All I saw was shallow, malicious self-justification, twisting the facts to paint me as the villain while seeking pity from others. She made no mention of the fact that she lived in a luxury apartment paid for entirely by my financial support. Instead, she cast herself as a helpless victim, carefully hiding every inconvenient truth. The moment I saw that post, the last remnants of hesitation in my heart were burned away entirely by flames of rage. I see. That's how it's going to be, Madison. I whispered quietly to myself, then turned back to my computer. There was no longer any room for mercy, and so the fateful week came and went. The morning after the deadline expired, I walked into the courthouse without the slightest hesitation. As a lawyer, drafting my own complaint was a familiar, almost mechanical task. Defendant: Madison. Claim damages: $15,000. Statement of damage: list of exhibits. I typed each necessary detail with precision and submitted the documents to the court. This was no longer a family matter. It was a legal proceeding between creditor and debtor, a battle for my dignity. A few days later, when the court-issued complaint reached Madison, Ethan finally lost control. He thrust the papers at me, his voice trembling. You actually filed a lawsuit. I can't believe this. You're heartless. You're a person without blood or tears. Yes, I replied calmly, because the two of you dried up every drop of my blood and tears a long time ago. I'll see you in court, Ethan, and you may very well be summoned as a witness. At my cold, unwavering words, he stood frozen, his face stricken with despair. There was no turning back now. The battleground had shifted from our home to the courtroom. Months later, we finally sat inside the courthouse. I took my seat at the plaintiff's counsel's table. Of course, I was representing myself. And there, on the defendant's bench, sat Madison, her face pale and gaunt, her expression frozen with tension. Beside her sat Ethan, wearing the bitter look of someone chewing on nails, likely because they couldn't afford to hire an attorney and he was serving merely as her companion. The judge entered quietly, and the courtroom was instantly filled with a tense silence. How ironic, I thought. I had stood in this very place countless times before, but never imagined I would one day face my own family across the aisle. My argument was simple and clear. When the monitor in the courtroom displayed images of my ruined wedding dress, smeared with paint, its fabric ripped beyond repair, I heard soft gasps escape from the spectators. Next, I submitted a certificate from the designer who created the dress, objectively proving that it was a fully custom-made piece worth $15,000. Then, I calmly recounted the facts of Madison's behavior on the day of the incident and Ethan's unbelievable remarks, stripping away all emotion, presenting only the truth. In contrast, the defense's claims were, as expected, purely emotional. Madison, through tears, pleaded, "I didn't mean any harm. I thought it was just an old party costume." Their only witness was Ethan, who took the stand to defend his sister. "My wife. I mean Sophia. She's a perfectionist, sometimes overly sensitive. My sister only wanted to have fun on Halloween. It was a youthful mistake, just a moment of poor judgment. Dragging her into court over this is far too cold-hearted." When his testimony concluded, I rose to my feet. Permission to cross-examine. I stepped forward, standing directly before Ethan, and locked eyes with him. "Mr. Witness, you just described your sister's actions as a youthful mistake, correct? Then tell me this. Do you honestly believe that a 25-year-old law school student deceiving a bridal preservation service, misusing contractual information to steal an expensive possession, and then destroying it can be excused under the phrase, a youthful mistake? That's just a figure of speech. She regrets what happened. Let's talk about that regret. On the day of the incident, which did you prioritize more? The pain I felt watching my one-of-a-kind wedding dress destroyed, or your sister's funny little mishap? When you demanded that I show family compassion, did that concept of family include me, the victim, at all? Faced with my pointed questions, Ethan faltered, his face flushing red. Unable to form a coherent response, he lashed out emotionally instead. "You're always like this. Always with logic. Never any heart." His disgraceful display only served to prove, before the entire court, that he lacked any objective judgment and was blindly defending his sister without reason. I saw no further need to question him and quietly returned to my seat. Next, Madison took the stand. "Ms. Madison," I addressed her deliberately, using a formal tone. "You're currently enrolled in law school, working hard each day to become a future member of the legal profession, correct?" "Yes." "Excellent. Then, as someone studying law, could you explain, in your own words, the concept of tort liability under civil law?" Stammering, she managed to respond. "If someone unlawfully infringes on another person's rights, they are responsible for compensating the damages." "Exactly. Now, do you recognize that your actions in this case fall under the definition of an unlawful act you just described? Please answer yes or no." Madison bit her lip and remained silent. An oppressive silence filled the courtroom. I did not relent. "Since you cannot answer, let me ask you another question. When you took that dress, you understood that it was someone else's property, didn't you?" "Yes." "And you also failed to follow the most basic procedure of asking the rightful owner, me, for permission, correct?" "Yes." In other words, while studying law, you intentionally disregarded and infringed upon another person's property rights. As a result, you caused damages amounting to $15,000. These are all facts you have just admitted to. And yet, do you still believe that your subjective excuse of, "I didn't mean any harm," holds any weight in a court of law? Then, to bring this farce to an end, I played my final card. "Your Honor, I would like to submit additional evidence." At my signal, an image appeared on the large courtroom monitor. It was a screenshot from Madison's own social media account, that very post. There, displayed for everyone to see, was her mocking caption alongside provocative hashtags like toxic sister-in-law and I am the victim. A ripple of shock spread through the gallery. I turned toward Madison, whose face had gone pale, and delivered my final ultimatum in a calm but unyielding voice. Defendant, please answer. In this courtroom, you claim with tears that you're remorseful, yet behind the scenes, you publicly defame me on social media and paint yourself as a tragic heroine. Is this the true meaning of your words? I didn't mean any harm? Madison looked back and forth between the monitor and my face, letting out a soundless cry before collapsing to the floor. Ethan's expression twisted in despair. The verdict, needless to say, was a complete victory for me. The judge ordered Madison to pay the entire $15,000 in damages. And finally, after reading the judgment aloud, the judge added an extraordinary remark of his own. The defendant is a student of the law, yet she has shown a blatant disregard for its very spirit. Beyond paying compensation, she must spend the rest of her life understanding the weight of how her actions will affect her future. Those words spoke more eloquently than anything else. This was not just a financial victory. It was the execution of justice under the law. From that day forward, everything was over. When I returned home, I told Ethan that I wanted a divorce. He no longer had the strength to argue. During the division of property, I made no compromises as a lawyer and asserted my full rights. As ordered by the court, Madison paid the full $15,000 in damages. Of course, as a student, she couldn't possibly afford such a sum in one payment. She was forced to take out a high-interest personal loan from a financial institution. As a result, her liability to me transformed into a heavy, long-term repayment obligation to the bank, weighed down further by interest. Naturally, the rent payments I had once been covering for her never resumed. Madison was evicted from her luxury apartment, forced to move back in with her parents, burdened with massive debt. A year has passed since then. From the day that verdict was handed down, my life transitioned into a new phase. I finalized my divorce from Ethan and let go of the home we once shared, along with the suffocating memories trapped inside its walls. Now, I rent a beautiful residence in the heart of the city, one that doubles as an office, and I devote myself to my work more than ever before. I did lose some things, yes. But the peace of mind and freedom I gained are worth more than anything I gave up. Every now and then, I find myself recalling that trial. Taking legal action against my own family was, without question, the most agonizing decision of my life. Yet now, a year later, I am certain from the depths of my heart that it was the only right path to save myself. Just recently, over dinner with an old college friend we had in common, I happened to hear about my ex-husband and his sister, how their lives turned out afterward. Ethan, having lost me as his financial pillar, could no longer sustain his lifestyle with the instability of his freelance income. In the end, he moved out of his apartment and returned to his parents' home, just like Madison. As for Madison, her parents have somehow managed to keep paying her tuition, but the civil court's ruling against her has left an indelible stain on her record. The legal world is astonishingly small. No matter how exceptional her future academic performance may be, the fact that she was sued for an unlawful act will forever follow her like a heavy chain. I heard, too, that the once boastful social media account, the one she used to flaunt her life, is now set to private. Ethan, by spoiling his sister, lost his wife and ruined her future in the legal field as well. And yet, hearing all of this, I felt nothing. No sympathy. No pity. Not even the exhilaration of victory. Because all of this was simply the inevitable consequence of their own actions, a conclusion they alone brought upon themselves. My wedding dress will never return to its original form. But through that battle, I reclaimed something far more valuable than money. I regained my dignity, something no one has the right to trample, and the future I will carve out for myself on my own terms.